Hello, everyone. Today, we're diving into a true story that'll leave you speechless. Names and details have been changed to protect their privacy. Have you ever been trapped in a secret so dark it consumes your every breath? That was my life. Married to David, a man whose charm hid a monster. I'm his wife. And this is my story of surviving not just his abuse, but the woman who forced me to hide it, my mother-in-law. Helen. Why would a mother protect her son's cruelty to save face? Let's uncover the truth together. I met David 5 years ago at a charity gala. His smile disarming, his words like honey. We were engaged within a year, and I thought I'd found my happily ever after. But 6 months into our marriage, the mask slipped. It started small. A harsh word here. A grip too tight there. By our first anniversary, David's temper was a storm I couldn't predict. He'd scream, throw things, and once, he pinned me against the kitchen counter. His eyes wild as I begged him to stop. I was terrified. But I loved him. I thought I could fix him. Helen, David's mother, was the pillar of our community, elegant, poised, the kind of woman who hosted fundraisers and never had a hair out of place. To her, family was everything, but not in the way you'd think. It was about image, legacy, the perfect facade. When I first hinted at David's behavior, her response was a cold smile and a warning. We don't air our dirty laundry. Dear, you'll learn. I was stunned. She knew. She'd always known her son's darkness, but chose to polish it away like a tarnished silver spoon. The first time I tried to leave, after David shattered a vase inches from my head, Helen was at our door within hours. She didn't ask if I was okay. Instead, she sat me down, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. You're a wife now. You don't run. You fix things quietly. What would people say if they knew her words sank into me like claws? I was 26 alone and desperate for her approval. So, I stayed. I lied to my friends, my parents, even myself. I wore long sleeves to hide bruises and smiled at family dinners, while my heart screamed. Helen's control was suffocating. She'd call daily, checking if I'd handled David's moods, as if I were managing a toddler's tantrum. She'd remind me of her sacrifices, how she'd raised David alone after her husband's death, how the family name was her legacy. Don't shame us, she'd say, her eyes boring into mine. I felt like a puppet, her strings tightening with every lie I told. But the more I hid David's abuse, the worse it got. He'd apologize, cry, promise change, only to lash out again. And Helen, she'd send flowers, as if they could bloom over my pain. What would you do? Caught between a husband's fists and a mother-in-law's demands, I was drowning. But no one could see. The world saw a perfect couple, a perfect life. Behind closed doors, I was a prisoner. Not just to David, but to Helen's obsession with appearances. How long could I keep this secret before it broke me? Stick around. Because this story's just beginning. Helen's world was a stage, and I was her reluctant actress, playing the role of the perfect wife. Her obsession with appearances wasn't just a quirk. It was a religion. Every Sunday, we'd attend her church, where she'd parade us like trophies. David's arm around me, my smile practiced to perfection. Aren't they lovely? She'd beam to her friends, her voice dripping with pride. But my stomach churned, knowing the truth behind our polished exterior. David's cruelty was growing, and Helen's grip on me tightened to keep it hidden. How far would she go to protect her precious image? At home, David's temper was a ticking bomb. One night, he screamed at me for burning dinner. His face inches from mine, veins bulging. I flinched, waiting for the blow that didn't come, but the fear was enough. Later, he sobbed, begging forgiveness, and I forgave him. Because what else could I do? Helen called the next morning, not to check on me, but to remind me of our upcoming family brunch. Wear the blue dress, she instructed. It photographs well. I wanted to scream that her son had nearly broken me, but her tone left no room for truth. Helen's house was a shrine to perfection, gleaming chandeliers, family portraits with frozen smiles. At her brunches, I'd serve coffee to her guests, nodding as they praised our beautiful marriage. Helen would chime in, "Oh, they're just so in love I'd bite my tongue, my bruises hidden under makeup." Once, I caught a guest's sympathetic glance when David snapped at me over a spilled drink. I froze, terrified she'd seen through us. But Helen swooped in, laughing it off. "He's just passionate," she said, steering the conversation away. Her control was flawless. She had a knack for rewriting reality. When I confided in her about David shoving me during an argument, she didn't blink. "Men have tempers," she said, pouring tea. "You need to be stronger. Dear, don't make a scene." A scene was her worst fear. Whispers at her country club, pitying looks at church. She'd drill it into me. "The family name is sacred. You're part of it now." I felt like a cog in her machine. My pain irrelevant as long as the facade held. What would you do if your every move was watched? Your every word scripted? I started to lose myself. I'd catch my reflection in Helen's gilded mirrors, barely recognizing the woman staring back. My friends noticed I was quieter, but I'd brush it off, parroting Helen's lines, "Just busy with married life." One friend, Sarah, pressed harder, asking if I was okay. I almost broke, but Helen's voice echoed in my head. "Don't shame us." So, I lied. Again, the weight of it crushing me. David's abuse wasn't just physical anymore. He'd mock my cooking, my clothes, my dreams, chipping away at my soul. Yet, Helen's demands were just as bruising. She'd critique my posture, my tone, even my laugh, molding me into her vision of a proper wife. "You represent us," she'd say, her smile sharp. I was trapped, not just by David's fists, but by Helen's relentless need to control the narrative. Could I keep this up forever? Or would the truth finally crack her perfect world? Stay with me? This gets messier. The lies I told to protect Helen's precious image were eating me alive. Every fake smile, every "we're fine" to my parents, felt like a betrayal of myself. David's abuse was a storm raging behind closed doors. But Helen's insistence on silence was the chain keeping me tethered to it. Her manipulative tactics, guilt, flattery, veiled threats ensured I stayed quiet, all to shield her reputation. How long could I carry this burden before it crushed me? The emotional toll was suffocating, and I was starting to crack. David's outbursts were relentless now. One evening, he threw a glass against the wall because I'd forgotten to iron his shirt. Shards scattered across the floor, and I stood frozen, heart pounding. As he screamed, I was useless. He stormed out, leaving me to clean up the mess, both literal and emotional. I wanted to call my mom, to sob and tell her everything. But Helen's voice haunted me. Don't humiliate us. So, I picked up the pieces, plastered on a smile, and went to bed Beside the man who terrified me, Helen's control was a masterclass in manipulation. She'd call after David's episodes, her tone syrupy with concern. "Is everything all right? Dear, you know you can talk to me?" But when I hinted at the truth, her warmth vanished. "You're exaggerating." She'd snap. "Don't stir up trouble." Once, she invited me for tea and spent an hour reminiscing about David's childhood, painting him as a sensitive boy who needed my strength. "You're his wife," she said, eyes glinting. "Hold the family together." It was a command, not a request. And I felt the weight of her expectations pressing down. Lying to my loved ones was the hardest part. My best friend, Sarah, kept asking why I seemed distant at a coffee shop. Her eyes searched mine as she pressed. "Are you sure you're okay?" My throat tightened. I wanted to scream about David's rage, Helen's demands, but fear stopped me. "Just stressed," I mumbled, stirring my latte. Sarah didn't buy it, but I deflected, hating myself for the lie. My parents were next. Their worried calls harder to dodge. "You sound tired," Mom said. I laughed it off, but each deception carved a deeper hole in my heart. What would you do? Living a lie to save someone else's pride? I felt like a ghost in my own life. Sleepless nights became routine. My mind replaying David's cruelty and Helen's warnings. I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering if I deserved this. Maybe I wasn't strong enough, good enough. Helen's subtle digs didn't help. "You need to try harder," she'd say, inspecting my appearance at family events. Her approval was a carrot I chased, but it always dangled out of reach. The secrecy was isolating me. I stopped joining friends for drinks, dreading their questions. At Helen's lavish dinner parties, I'd play the perfect wife, but my hands trembled as I passed the wine. Guests would compliment our perfect life, and I'd nod, the irony bitter. Helen's watchful eyes ensured I performed, but inside, I was screaming. How much longer could I keep this up? The truth was a caged bird, desperate to fly free. "Stick around, this cage is about to rattle." The cracks in Helen's perfect facade were starting to show, and I was teetering on the edge. David's abuse was a fire burning hotter, and Helen's demands to hide it were a weight I could barely carry. Then came a moment that shook everything, a public incident that threatened to expose the truth. I was caught between my fear of David's violence and Helen's relentless pressure to keep up appearances. How much longer could I hold this together? When the world was starting to see the bruises I'd hidden for so long, it happened at Helen's annual garden party. A glittering affair with a social circle, sipping champagne under fairy lights. I'd spent hours preparing. My nerves raw from David's latest outburst the night before. He'd slammed me against a wall for talking back. My wrist throbbed under a bracelet. But Helen had coached me smile, charm, deflect. I played my part, laughing at jokes, until David, already 3 drinks in, grabbed my arm too tightly as we posed for photos. A guest, Mrs. Larson, noticed my wince. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked. Her brow furrowed. The air froze. David's grip tightened, but his smile didn't falter. Helen swooped in like a hawk. "Oh, she's fine, just clumsy," she said with a laugh, steering Mrs. Larson away. But the older woman's eyes lingered on me, and I felt exposed. like a spotlight had caught me mid-act. Later. Helen cornered me in the kitchen. What were you thinking? Making a scene, she hissed. I tried to explain it was David, but she cut me off. Control yourself. People talk. Her words stung, as if I'd invited the pain. I nodded, swallowing my anger. But something inside me shifted. I was tired of being her puppet. David's violence was escalating. Days after the party, he threw a book at me for nagging about his late nights. It hit my shoulder, and I crumpled, sobbing, as he loomed over me. You're pathetic. He spat, then left. I stared at the bruise blooming on my skin, wondering how I'd explain it. Helen called the next morning. Not about me, but about a charity event. Wear something elegant, she said. We can't have gossip. I wanted to scream that her son was the problem, not me. But fear of her wrath and David's kept me silent. What would you do if the truth slipped out in front of everyone? I was paralyzed, replaying Mrs. Larson's concerned look. Had she seen through us? Would she tell others? The thought of Helen's fury if rumors spread made my stomach churn. Yet a tiny part of me hoped someone would notice, would save me from this nightmare. I started avoiding mirrors, unable to face the woman I'd become hollow, obedient, broken. Helen's voice echoed. You're part of this family now. But at what cost? The incident at the party wasn't the end. Whispers followed me at church, glances I couldn't ignore. Helen doubled down, inviting me to more events, as if visibility would drown out suspicion. Head high, she'd say, adjusting my scarf to hide a mark. I complied, but my heart raced with every step. The facade was fraying, and I was the thread about to snap. Could I keep lying? Or would the truth burst free? Stay with me, the storm's about to break. I couldn't keep living in Helen's cage, pretending David's abuse was my fault to fix. The garden party had lit a spark. Someone had seen the truth, and I couldn't unsee it. I was done being silenced. It was time to confront Helen, to lay bare her role in enabling her son's cruelty, her cold justification, prioritizing family pride over my pain, pushed me to a breaking point. Could I finally stand up to the woman who'd orchestrated my silence? Or would her control crush me again? The confrontation happened at Helen's house, a week after the party. I'd spent days replaying Mrs. Larson's worried glance, my anger building. David was out, and I drove to Helen's, my hands shaking on the wheel. She greeted me with her usual poise, offering tea in her pristine parlor. I ignored the cup, my voice trembling, but firm. Helen, David's hurting me. You know it. Why do you keep making me hide it? Her smile faltered, but only for a second. She leaned back, folding her hands. You're being dramatic, she said, her tone icy. Every marriage has challenges. I pushed harder, my voice rising. He shoves me, screams at me, throws things. I'm scared. Helen, you're his mother. Why won't you stop him? Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw her mask slip. Stop him, she snapped. You think I raised a monster? You're his wife. You manage him. The family name depends on it. I was stunned. She didn't deny David's abuse. She just didn't care. To her, my suffering was collateral damage, a small price for her spotless reputation. What would you do? Facing a woman who'd rather protect her image than her own son's victim? I felt sick. But I pressed on. I'm not your prop, Helen. I'm a person. And I'm breaking. Her response was a knife. Then, break quietly, she said. Stand in. If you go public, you'll ruin us all. David, me, yourself. Think of the shame. She spoke of shame as if it were mine to bear, not her son's. I left, tears burning, her words echoing, break quietly. She'd rather I shatter than let the world see her flawed son back home. David's mood was darker than ever. He sensed my defiance, slamming doors, accusing me of acting different. I tiptoed around him. But Helen's justification haunted me. She wasn't just ignoring the abuse she was enabling it, molding David into the man he'd become. I saw it in her stories of his childhood, how she'd excused his tantrums as passion. She'd created a king, and I was his punching bag, all to preserve her throne of appearances. The confrontation changed me. I wasn't just fighting David's fists. I was battling Helen's legacy, her belief that image trumped humanity. But I was still trapped, her warning ringing in my ears. If I spoke out, I'd lose everything: my marriage, my place in her world. Yet, staying silent was killing me. Could I find the strength to defy her, or would her control win? The answer was coming, and it would shake us all. Keep listening. This fight's not over. After confronting Helen, I felt both alive and terrified, like I'd lit a fuse I couldn't extinguish. Her cold dismissal of my pain proved she'd never help me. David's abuse was a runaway train, and I was done being tied to the tracks. I needed an escape. Someone to pull me from this nightmare, risking Helen's wrath. I reached out to my friend Sarah, a desperate cry for help as David's aggression spiraled. Could I trust her to keep my secret? Or would this spark the explosion I feared? Sarah and I met at a quiet diner, far from Helen's watchful eyes. My hands shook as I sipped coffee, scanning the door for David. Sarah's warm smile faltered when she saw my hollow eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, leaning close. "The dam broke." I whispered about David's violence, the shoves, the screams, the bruises. I told her how Helen forced me to hide it, her obsession with saving face caging me. Sarah's face hardened, but her voice was soft. "You don't have to live like this," she said, gripping my hand. For the first time, I felt seen. But fear clawed at me. Helen would destroy me if she found out. David's aggression was unrelenting now. That night, he came home drunk, raging about a work slight. I tried to calm him, but he grabbed my wrist, twisting until I cried out, "You're nothing without me." He snarled, letting go only when I went limp. I locked myself in the bathroom, sobbing. Sarah's words echoing. "You don't have to live like this." But leaving meant defying Helen, losing the life I'd built, however broken. I stared at my reflection, wondering if I had the strength to run. What would you do? Knowing one call could unravel everything, I texted Sarah the next day, asking for help finding a counselor. She replied instantly, sending numbers for domestic violence hotlines. I hid my phone, terrified David or Helen would see. Helen called that afternoon, her voice sharp. "You seemed off yesterday. Everything all right?" Her tone wasn't concern. It was a warning. I lied, saying I was tired. But my heart raced. She was a bloodhound, sniffing out dissent. I knew she'd sense my rebellion. and the thought of her fury made my stomach churn. Sarah became my lifeline. We met in secret, planning my next steps, a shelter, a lawyer, a way out. Each meeting felt like a betrayal of Helen's rules, but also a reclaiming of myself. Yet David's violence kept me on edge. One evening, he smashed a lamp because I'd looked at him wrong. As glass rained down, I realized I wasn't just fighting for freedom, I was fighting for my life. Sarah urged me to leave now, but fear of Helen's reach held me back. Could I break free before David's rage consumed me? The secrecy was a tightrope. I deleted texts, cleared call logs, lived in constant dread of discovery. Helen's world was a panopticon. Her influence everywhere: church, neighbors, even my own guilt. But Sarah's support was a spark, igniting a courage I'd buried. I wasn't ready to run yet, but I was planning, plotting, dreaming of a life beyond the lies. The truth was clawing its way out, and it would soon shatter everything. Stay with me. This is about to erupt. The truth I'd buried was a volcano, and it was about to erupt. Sarah's support had given me a lifeline, but David's violence was a tightening noose, and Helen's control was a wall I couldn't scale. Then came a family gathering at Helen's house, a night that would shatter her carefully crafted facade. The abuse I'd hidden for years spilled into the open, defying Helen's demands for silence. What happens when the lies you've been forced to tell collide with a moment no one can ignore? The consequences would change everything. It was Helen's birthday dinner, a lavish affair with relatives and her closest friends packed into her dining room. I was a wreck. My nerves frayed from David's latest outburst. He'd thrown my phone against the wall that morning, accusing me of sneaking around. I'd patched myself together with makeup and a forced smile. Helen's voice in my head: "Don't make a scene." But David was volatile, drinking heavily, his eyes glinting with menace. I served wine, dodging his sharp glances, while Helen beamed at her guests. The perfect hostess. The explosion came after dessert. David, slurring, snapped at me for refilling his glass too slowly. "Can't you do anything right?" He barked, loud enough for heads to turn. I froze, my face burning, as Helen laughed it off. "He's just teasing," she said, but her eyes warned me to stay quiet. Then David grabbed my arm, yanking me toward him. "Answer me," he roared. The room went silent. My cousin, Mark, stood up. "Let her go." "David," he said, voice low but firm. David's grip tightened, and I gasped in pain. Helen tried to intervene, her voice shrill. "Everyone, please. It's a misunderstanding." But Mark wasn't having it. "This isn't a joke. Helen, look at her." All eyes were on me, my sleeve riding up to reveal a fresh bruise. Gasps rippled through the room. Sarah, who'd been invited last minute, stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "She's been hiding this for years because you told her to," she said, staring at Helen. The truth was out. A grenade lobbed into Helen's perfect world. Her face paled, but she hissed, "How dare you?" What would you do when the secret you've carried is exposed to everyone? I was trembling, torn between fear and relief. David stormed out, cursing, leaving me to face the fallout. Helen rounded on me, her voice a venomous whisper. "You've ruined us." But the guests weren't buying her act anymore. Mark and Sarah flanked me, urging me to leave with them. For the first time, I saw Helen's power crumble, her guest whispering, her control slipping. I walked out, Sarah's arm around me, my heart pounding with terror and freedom. The night was a turning point. The family was divided. Some rallied around Helen, others called me, offering support. David's rage would come for me. I knew, but I wasn't alone anymore. Helen's facade had cracked, and I'd found my voice. Even if it shook, the truth was free. But the battle wasn't over. What would come next? Stay with me, the story's final chapter is coming. The night of Helen's birthday dinner changed everything. The truth about David's abuse, once a secret I was forced to bury, had erupted, shattering her pristine facade. I'd walked away from that house, Sarah and Mark by my side. But the fight for my freedom was far from over. Now, I'm reclaiming my voice, confronting Helen's toxic legacy, and breaking free from the silence she demanded. This is my story's end, and a call to others trapped in shadows. Can you find the courage to speak your truth? Leaving David was a battle. After the dinner, I stayed with Sarah, filing for a restraining order as his threats flooded my phone. He was furious, blaming me for humiliating him, but I was done cowering. The legal process was grueling: court dates, affidavits, reliving the trauma, but Sarah and my cousin Mark were my anchors. My parents, horrified by the truth, flew in, their support a lifeline. Yet Helen's shadow loomed. She called, her voice dripping with disdain. "You've destroyed this family," she said. I hung up, trembling. But her words no longer owned me. Helen's legacy was a house of cards, built on denial and control. She'd raised David to believe he was untouchable, excusing his cruelty as passion while molding me into a silent accomplice. Her obsession with appearances, church, fundraisers. The family name had justified my suffering. But that night, when her guests saw the truth, her power crumbled. Some defended her, clinging to her charm, but others, like Mrs. Larson, reached out, apologizing for not seeing sooner. The community buzzed with whispers, and Helen's throne of perfection wobbled. What would you do? Free from a cage, but haunted by its scars? I started therapy, unpacking years of guilt and fear. I learned I wasn't weak for staying. I was surviving. I rebuilt my life, moving to a new city, finding a job, and reconnecting with friends I'd pushed away. David faced charges, his charm no longer enough to save him. Helen faded from my life, her influence shrinking as I grew stronger. I heard she still hosts her parties, but the guest list is thinner now. Her reputation tarnished. The story began with a question. Have you ever been trapped in a secret I was? By a husband's fists and a mother-in-law's demands. But I broke free. And if you're hiding your pain, you can too. Speak out. Reach out. Fight for yourself. The shame isn't yours. It belongs to those who hurt you. What's your story? Share it in the comments. And let's lift each other up. Like, subscribe, and keep talking. Silence only protects the guilty. Let's uncover the truth together. The story follows a young wife's harrowing journey, trapped in a cycle of domestic abuse by her husband, David, and forced to hide it by her mother-in-law, Helen, to preserve the family's image. Narrated in the first person, it unfolds over 8 parts, detailing the escalating violence, Helen's manipulative control, and the emotional toll of secrecy. A public incident at a family gathering exposes the truth, shattering Helen's facade and empowering the narrator to confront her abuser and his enabler. With support from friends and family, she escapes, reclaims her life, and reflects on the courage to break free. The narrative highlights themes of silence, shame, and resilience, urging others to speak out against abuse. It's a raw, emotional call to action, emphasizing that the shame belongs to abusers, not survivors.